Well, then I think we will start. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Teachers Retirement System Investment Meeting. Today is May 6th, 2021. Mr. McTeague, will you call the roll, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you mentioned, this is the Teachers Retirement Board, and it's the investment meeting for May 6, 2021. John Adler.
I'm here.
Thomas Brown.
I'm here, Thad. Good morning.
Good morning. Natalie Green-Giles.
Here.
David Kazansky.
Present.
Russell Buckley. Deborah Penny.
I am here.
And Susanna Vickers.
Good morning, I'm here.
Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so we'll start off with the Passport Funds March 2021 Performance Review. Will you take it away, Robin or Mike?
Great, I'll start. Good morning, everyone, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week. I'll begin actually by doing a very quick recap of the first quarter of 2021. And as part of that, we'll refer to the performance of the Passport Funds through March 31st as well. And everyone should have that report on the invite. So as you'll recall, coming into 2021, many of the themes we were discussing at the beginning of the year were around vaccine distribution, unprecedented monetary and fiscal support, and really what that translated into was opportunity and an opportunistic outlook for markets, even though it was obvious that the economy still had some rebound that needed to occur and is expected to continue to occur. Markets were very much optimistic coming into this year, as were many involved in the markets. And we saw that translate into performance, particularly as it relates to equities. So equities really did perform in line with sort of that increased optimism. And so with the rising sentiment, if you will, for growth, that put upward pressure on equity markets. With that, it also put upward pressure on interest rates. And so as we sort of progressed through the quarter, there was certainly more conversation around what the implications of rising rates would be, and investors began to also focus on what the prospects for higher inflation meant and how they might react accordingly. If you're looking at the performance in the report through March, what really stands out: strong positive returns for equity markets in the U.S. The Russell 3000 was up about 6.4%. Developed stocks outside the U.S., those were developed market stocks rather, those were up about 3.5%. And then in emerging markets, the emerging market index up about 2.3% all told. Definitely mixed returns among different emerging markets, but still a net positive return for that index as a whole. What were the themes within equities? Definitely a pro-cyclical rally here in the U.S. led by energies, which were up about 31% during the quarter. Financials up about 16% all told, and industrials up about 11%. So that's what really led here in the U.S. If you're looking at the growth value dynamic, which we've spent a lot of time talking about, value significantly outpaced growth in the U.S. During the first quarter. I'll give you a couple snippets. The Russell 2000 Value Index was up 21.2% during the quarter. And that was enough to outpace the Russell 2000 Growth Index, which was up about 5%. So some notable dispersion between the two there. What's also worth noting is small cap stocks, perhaps not surprising given the pro-cyclical rally, but small cap stocks outperform large cap stocks as well. All told, the small cap index was up about 12-13%, and large caps altogether up about 6%. So some notable dispersion among different parts of the market, and in most respects, a divergence from what we saw quite a bit last year and over prior years. So, what that really translated into were strong absolute returns for the Passport Funds so far year to date. You can see on the report the diversified equity fund with assets of about $18.7 billion. That fund year to date up about 6%. That was with a strong 2.9% return for the month of March. And year to date, the fund has outpaced both the hybrid benchmark and the Russell 3000 index. I'm sorry, year to date, that's a little bit behind the Russell 3000 index. And really what drove the relative result between the fund and the US is obviously the contribution, which wasn't quite as strong from non-US equities, that allocation up about 2.9% during the year-to-date time period, as well as the defensive composite. So keeping pace sort of directionally up about 2.8%, but certainly not as much as the US on its own. If you're looking through to the contribution from active management, you can certainly see, given the dynamics and the themes that we saw that resonated really well in the US equity market, the active composite was up about 13.3% relative to the Russell 3 up about 6.4. So a strong period for active management here in the US. On the non-US side, active management was a bit more mixed, and you can see the net impact year to date. There's a little bit of negative tracking over that short 3-month time period. Beyond the diversified equity fund, you can see the balanced fund with assets of $560 million. That fund was up 1.3% this year. International equities up about 2.9% all told. I noted earlier that the composite benchmark there up about 3.5%. The sustainable equity fund, positive return of about 0.5%. That lags the Russell 1000 growth index by about 0.5%. And the below that, you can see the two index options within the passport funds, the US equity index fund up 6%, and the international equity index fund up 2.8%. I'll pause there and see if there's any questions on the markets or the passport funds. Happy to address.
Michael, question.
Sure.
Those 1-year numbers, those are typos, right?
Yeah, I cited the 1-year numbers, I think, in the last meeting, and they were pretty strong. And the 1 year is such a short-term time period, so I didn't want to put too much emphasis on it. But obviously, that includes the roll-off of March 2020. So certainly want to take those with a grain of salt. But yes, the absolute returns over the last 12 months, John, to your point, very staggering. So the diversified equity fund over that time period up 61%. There were below, or I should say within the passport funds, if you're looking at the individual line items, really strong results for some of the managers on their own. Some of the numbers are I'll use the term silly, but we had one manager, for example, or managers in the smaller and micro cap part of the market that were up in excess of 100% over that time period. So really, really just crazy numbers. It goes to show you why we try not to think too much about that point in time performance, and why the rolling periods, it helps to have a longer term perspective for sure. So
Thank you.
Unbelievable. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, I guess we're ready for April 2021.
Yep, and really, I'll say the positive results continued. We actually saw a 1-month reversal, if you will, of the value growth dynamic again. So growth did a little bit better than value during April, but you can see all told, the Russell 3000 index was up over 5% during April. International composite stocks up over 3%. The defensive proxy here that we have has that benchmark up about 3.7%, and the diversified equity funds hybrid benchmark positive 4.6%. If you peel those numbers back a little bit further, you could see developed countries outside the US up about 3%, international small caps up about 4.6%, and emerging markets up 2.5%. So I will pause there and see if there's any questions, but certainly the trend for April was positive.
For equity, not so much
for equities, yes, right. And as I noted earlier, with the run up in equities and the prospects for future growth, interest rates have been on the rise. We did see yields pull back a little bit in the last 30 or so days, but net a pretty staggering increase in interest rates so far year to date.
Okay, any questions from Michael or Robin with all that good news? Well, let's hope you keep bringing us good news like that.
We'll try.
Excellent. Does anyone else have anything else for public agenda? Okay, seeing nothing else, do I hear a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Adler. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we are moving into executive session. Okay. All right, Susan, will you report out?
I certainly will. Consensus was reached on a real estate on a modest increase in a real estate transaction that was previously approved. Consensus was reached as to how to implement a policy issue with regard to the passport funds that was already approved in the pension fund. And we received a presentation on issues within the fixed income portfolio in the pension fund. Consensus was reached as to a path forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have anything else for public meeting? Anything else? Okay. Mr. Fulvio, up to good work. Up, Mr. Dorsey, yes.
No, I was going to say, I'd like to thank everybody for today and make a motion to adjourn.
Whoa, you're just spot on with these motions. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Excellent. Any opposed? All right, well, you all be well and have a wonderful, wonderful day.